Leslie was driving at night to visit her parents, but unfortunately, her car broke down in the middle of nowhere. She decided to walk around to find some help and came across an eerie-looking house. As she started walking through the garden to reach the door, she suddenly got really scared and ran back to her car. Can you spot the 3 things that made her terrified? Look at the statue at the center of the fountain. Its eyes are moving left and right. Secondly, do you see the skeleton hands that are trying to crawl out of the ground? Creepy. And on top of everything, the black cat here has a snake tail instead of a regular one. Mrs. Blair thought, what better way to scare her students than with a pop quiz on Halloween? But she decided to pay extra attention during the exam because everybody would be coming to school dressed in costumes, and that would make it easier for them to cheat. And she was right, because one of them was indeed trying to cheat. Can you tell who? Look, this girl here is hiding a piece of paper with the answers under her witch's hat. On Halloween night, Amanda was playing Truth or Dare with her friends. When it was her turn, they challenged her to enter the old mansion, which not a single soul in town dared to enter before. She accepted the challenge and went inside. But suddenly, the door behind her closed on its own and got locked. Then a skeleton butler greeted her and said, "You're not welcome here, but you can leave if you know my riddle. In the darkest night, I come to life. My eerie gaze causes no strife. What am I that lights the way when monsters and goblins come out to play?" Can you help Amanda? The correct answer is a jack-o'-lantern. Amy was invited to a Halloween party in her neighborhood. When she arrived at the house, she noticed 3 people in costumes who were chilling in the hot pool. But one of them was not a real human being. Can you tell who? Well, the first girl in the witch's costume and the second guy with fangs look scary, but they're only wearing makeup. But the girl who is in a mermaid costume is a real mermaid, because look at her neck. She has gills. It was Aurora's 21st birthday, and her witch aunts were finally going to accept her to their coven. However, there was one spell that she needed to complete as her final test, and it required a magical cauldron. The catch is one could only use this cauldron if they solved the riddle that was engraved on it, which said, "I'm a season of colors with leaves that fall. It's when cozy sweaters come out to warm you all. What am I, aspiring magician, do you know? Solve this riddle and your magical powers will grow." Can you help Aurora find the correct answer? The answer you're looking for is the season of autumn. Take a look at these 2 women who are preparing the dinner tables for their Halloween party, but one of them has nefarious intentions. Can you tell who is the dangerous one? If you take a closer look, you'll see that the lady on the left is more spooky than scary. The green cream on the brownies may look poisonous, but it's just food coloring. And those fingers on the tray are only finger-shaped cookies. So she is simply preparing for the holiday. But the lady on the right didn't even bother to wear a costume, even though she's throwing a Halloween dinner party. And why would anyone sharpen their knives before her guests arrive? That's suspicious. So she must be the dangerous one. The young witch, Elaine, who lived in a deep enchanted forest, was invited to her coven's Halloween gathering. Unfortunately, her broom was broken, and the only other way she could get to her destination was through drinking the teleportation potion. However, she had never cast it before, and the three main ingredients for it were hidden with a riddle in her spell book. The first one was, "In the shadows I quietly grow, not a plant nor an animal you know. After rain I might start to bloom, often found in a forest gloom." Can you tell what the first ingredient is? It's a mushroom. The riddle for the second ingredient went, "I'm as light as air, soft to the touch. Upon a bird's back, I don't weigh much. I help a creature soar high and free, yet I fall to the ground for all to see. What am I?" Do you know the answer? It's a feather. And the riddle for the third ingredient was this: "In darkness I weave my trap so discreet. With patience I wait for a tasty treat. Silent and stealthy in corners I bide. With multiple eyes my world I divide." Can you help Elaine find out what that is? The answer is a spider. But now she needed to wander deeper into the woods to find those ingredients. Take a look around. Can you help her spot them? There's the mushroom under these flowers. The bird's feather is here, hidden behind the flowers. And the spider is climbing up this tree. One famous club in the city was organizing a Halloween party, and Jenny and her friends were going to go. Inside, there were two different counters from where they could get their drinks. But one of these bartenders is dangerous. Can you tell which one? This bartender is dressed as a vampire for Halloween, and he is simply putting on a fire show. On the other hand, the bartender who is polishing the glasses has a bottle of poison here among the bottles, so the girl should avoid him at all costs. James was attending a Halloween dinner party. He wanted to have something to eat, so he headed to the open buffet. Examine these three snack options closely. One of them will hurt his stomach. Can you tell which one that is? The first cupcakes might look like they're dripped in blood, but it's just cherry-flavored glaze. And these worms on the pudding cups are just worm gummies. But look at this candy apple. It's glowing like fluorescence. That looks toxic. Monsters from all around the world were going to meet at their annual Halloween celebration. But the word was out that a human heard about it and was planning to crash their party. So they placed a monster security at the entrance of the venue. The security was suspicious of these three creatures. Can you help him figure out which one of them is actually a human? Take a peek at the moon. It's not full. Then how come this werewolf is here? He shouldn't have turned into one, so he must be a human wearing a costume. Amy and her friends went to the Halloween parade that was visiting their town. There was a scary maze, and Amy decided to try it herself. However, after a while, she got lost and started to panic. But she didn't notice that there were hints around the maze that would guide her to the exit. Can you spot them? Look at these bricks on the maze walls here. They're in the shape of arrows. So she can just follow them and leave. Aaron got dressed as a pirate for Halloween. On his way to his friends, he saw a glowing box on the side of the road. He got curious and went to check it out. He discovered that it was a treasure box. He tried to open it, but it was locked, and there was a riddle on it. I'm colorful and chatty, perched up high, with feathers so vibrant I catch your eye. I can mimic your words both near and far, found in the jungle or as a pet. Can you tell what am I? It's a parrot.
Uh-oh.
Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." "How come?" The young woman is Jack's daughter. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. The faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomer she'd been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. "A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news." 2 of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever, and the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the third day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. Okay, he said, one more riddle and you can go home. 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Amy went on holiday to the seaside, and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, "I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, they celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A. And so on. Smarty pants. So Dave had to sneak into his mom's computer to delete some emails he accidentally sent her. His mom had a bad memory, so she always had notes with her passcodes. Luckily, the note was right there again, saying 9868. Dave entered the passcode, but it was wrong. Why? And what's the actual passcode? The note was just turned upside down. The actual passcode is 8986. Stephanie came home after a long day at work. She was very excited to finally eat her favorite chocolate she had been dreaming about all day. But the chocolate was gone. Stephanie interrogated each of her family members. Her husband said, "I just got home from work too and haven't eaten anything all day." Her daughter Della said, "I was studying all day and didn't eat anything too." Della's twin brother Arnie said, "It wasn't me." Who ate the chocolate? Take a closer look at Della's desk. There's a chocolate wrapper, but she said she didn't eat anything. She must have lied. A grocery store manager noticed that recently they started to lose watermelons. He suggested that there's a watermelon thief coming at the store from time to time. He opened one of the security videos and could immediately tell who the thief was. Look at the picture and try to guess who is the culprit. Look at the guy in the middle. He has a ball in his hands, but he's holding it like it's very heavy. Usually, balls aren't heavy, so it must be a watermelon. Tom and Mark came to the job audition. The company doesn't want to hire parents because they need full commitment. Both men said that they're not parents, but one of them is lying. Can you tell who? It's Mark. Take a closer look at his hand. There's a pink scrunchie on it. He must have done his daughter's hair before the audition. Mrs. Smith invited her neighbors over for a fancy dinner. She used her best tea set and silver cutlery and cooked a great meal. However, during the dinner, she realized that one of her neighbors is a vampire. Who is the vampire, and how did she understand it? The vampire is the one who brought his own plastic spoon and is eating with it instead of with Mrs. Smith's silver cutlery. That's because vampires are afraid of silver. Four friends met after the summer break and talked about how their summer went. Toby was bragging about the months he spent in Chile and how hot it was there. However, his friends didn't believe him and called him a liar. Why? Chile is located in the southern hemisphere. During the summertime, it's winter there. Toby said it was hot, which can't be true. Three friends, Blair, Chloe, and Nell, were walking all day around town. They found a beautiful but dusty house where no one lived. They entered it and started to take pictures. In the evening, they were scrolling through the pictures and one of them made a scream. Take a look at the photos and say which one scared them and why. It's the first picture. There was no one in the house except for the girls, but on that picture, they're all three of them together, snapped from behind. Michelle was having a birthday party. She noticed her brother was eating in his room with some girl. However, she didn't know who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to find some hints. There were three girls at her party: Jasmine, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Can you? Her brother was dating Jasmine. Look at the dishes and the cutlery. There's a lipstick stain on the fork. Jasmine is the only one wearing lipstick. Pamela is a lawyer and Samantha is a journalist. Can you guess which one of these women is a mother? Take a look at the background. On the wall behind Samantha, there's some colorful marker scribbles. She must be a mother. Gianna was getting ready for her date. Suddenly, the lights in her apartment went off. She was almost ready and only needed her gloves. It was dark and she couldn't find a fitted pair. She only had gloves of two colors, brown and black. She was already late, so she decided to leave, taking several gloves with her. How many gloves should she take with her to be sure there's a pair of the same color? She just needs 3. Even if the first 2 are of a different color, the third one will either be black or brown, matching the other one. A police officer was following a robber around the city. Suddenly, the robber entered the hospital and disappeared. When the police officer entered the building, there were 3 workers. One of them must be a robber who dressed up to pretend to be a doctor. Can you tell who? It's the man in the middle. Look at his badge. There's a picture of a woman on it. He must have worn the first pair of clothes he noticed. It was Christmas morning and the whole family was home. When Bailey returned in her room after watching her show on TV, she found that someone stole all the presents she had been wrapping. She questioned every person in the house. Her mom said that she had been making dinner. Her dad said he had been mowing the lawn. Her brother said he had been playing video games in his room. Who stole the presents? It was Bailey's dad. It's winter, and we could see that it's snowing outside. He just couldn't mow the lawn. In the Arts Museum, the lights went off for a couple of minutes. When they came back on, the most expensive painting was missing. The detective arrived and started the investigation. There were 3 suspects, and he questioned each of them. Jessica, a dance teacher, said that she had been so scared when the lights went off that she couldn't even move and for sure didn't touch anything. Derek, a journalist, said he'd been in the bathroom at the time. Collins, an engineer, said he had been in a different room of the museum, watching the dinosaur fossil. Who's lying? It's Collins. It's an art museum. There are no dinosaur exhibitions. Can you tell who's not a real werewolf? It's actually the guy who looks like a werewolf. Werewolves only turn into wolves during the time of the full moon and at night. It's daytime now, so the guy must be just wearing a costume. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After the dawn, she tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked her to take her home. The witch agreed to help her, but only if Esme solved her riddle. If not, she'd have to stay with the witch forever. The witch took an apple, tied a string to it, and held it. She asked Esme to cut the string in half so that the apple didn't fall down. However, Esme couldn't touch the apple or hold it. How could she do it? Esme should tie a knot in the middle of the string, make it into a loop, and then cut the apple. The time police have found out that there's a time traveler who uses the time machine more often than allowed. They tracked him and followed him to the Stone Age. Can you guess who's the time traveler? It's this guy who's wearing sneakers. Sneakers in the Stone Age? Really? Mr. Brown was robbed in the street. The culprit hit him on the right side of his head and ran away with his wallet. Mr. Brown didn't see who it was, but he noticed that the person entered a nearby hospital. When he entered, there were 3 people sitting there. Take a close look at them and tell who was the culprit. Mr. Brown was hit on the right side of his face. This means that the robber is left-handed. Look at where the bags stand next to those people. The first woman has her purse on the left side of her, which means it must have been her. For her birthday, Sienna got a beautiful hairpin. She brought it to school and showed it to her friends during lunch. Then she left for the bathroom, and when she returned, the hairpin was gone. Take a look at the pictures before and after, and tell which of her friends stole it. Look at the glass of juice of the red-haired girl. It looks like there's more juice on the later picture. No, there's not. She just put a hairpin in the glass. Mr. Green got in a car accident and spent a month in the hospital. He got amnesia and partially forgot things. He didn't have any family, and after a month, he finally returned home. He found his street, but then he realized he didn't remember which of the 2 houses was actually his. Can you guess which one it was? His house is the one where the snow is unshoveled. He spent a month in the hospital and lives alone, so no one could clean the driveway. Look at the Christmas photos of 2 families. Can you tell which family is poor? The poor family is the second one. Even though the son has a big present, the parents don't have any presents at all. They probably couldn't afford to buy presents for themselves. Ellis had to go to the hospital the other day. When she entered, she immediately felt something off about the place. Walking along the hall, she spotted 3 doctors. There was something completely wrong about one of them. Which doctor is crazy? The one on the left, he's got wolf eyes and teeth, and there's no badge on his uniform. Stay away from him, Ellis. Alright, Ellis didn't listen to our piece of advice and went straight to Dr. Wolf's room. He says he needs to apply some new protective cream on her, but in fact, he just wants to test it. After covering Ellis with this magic lotion, she shouldn't have trusted him. He makes Ellis choose one of 3 containers to jump into. Wow, this is a weird hospital. One of them is filled with toxic waste. In the second container, there's acid that can eat through metal. The third one is filled with lava from a volcano that almost ruined a whole town a year ago. What container should Ellis choose? At least this time, Ellis made the right choice. She picked the container with lava. The volcano erupted a year ago, so the lava is already completely solid and cool. Okay, she nailed the first experiment, and Dr. Wolf gives Ellis a choice of 3 pills. He says the red one can help see the past, the blue one can help see the future, and the yellow one can help read other people's minds. Which one should Ellis choose? Ellis was smart enough this time. She randomly picked the yellow one, but she suspected it was another experiment. She gulped the water but never swallowed the pillow and still has it in her cheek. In fact, all 3 of them were poisoned. When the wolf went outside for a second, Ellis spat out the pill and ran away. Hey, try the urgent care clinic, Ellis. No wolves there. Ginny was cooking dinner for her friends. When everyone was at the table, she suddenly realized there was something wrong with one of her friends. Which friend didn't like the meal? It's Mike. He secretly shared it with Jenny's dog. Everybody knows that an old witch lives in this spooky old house. Nobody really wants to meet her. Mary is in this house right now, but she seems to be alone. How come? Who said witches can't have a name Mary? She was once young and beautiful too, but then that darn spell happened. One town had a weird law that said all the men had to be cleanly shaven, but no man was allowed to shave himself. The only person who was licensed to shave them was a 40-year-old hairdresser. But who shaved the hairdresser? Yeah, there was no need. The hairdresser was a woman. Allison met a stranger yesterday, and she immediately knew who he was. She hadn't seen this person before, and no one had ever described him to her. He wasn't a celebrity, and he wasn't doing anything unusual. So how come she knew who he was? The man was the twin brother of one of Allison's friends. Bill is a shoe shiner. He offers his services to passers-by for free. Still, people who accept it end up paying him of their own will. How so? Bill shines only one shoe for free. People don't want to look bizarre with just one clean shoe and have to pay for the shining of the other one. The king told his 3 daughters to place 3 identical kettles with the same amount of water on the fire. The king promised that the husband of the daughter whose kettle would boil first would become his heir. His youngest daughter's kettle boiled first. How come? While the other daughters kept lifting their kettle's lids to check if the water was already boiling, the youngest one kept it closed. Up for some math? Nah, just kidding. You'll only need your logic. Find a way to get 200 out of 188 by just using one line. Use the line to cut 188 horizontally. This way, you'll get two 100s. One person was 25 years old in 2000 and 20 years old in 2005. How is this possible? This person lived before Common Era. One man went to his friend's party and told his wife he'd be back before sunrise. He shaved and left home. He returned as promised before sunrise, but he was sporting a long, thick beard. How come? The man and his wife lived in a place with polar nights that can last for several months. A man was driving his car all the way from New York to Boston. Only at the end of the trip did he discover that one of his car's tires had been punctured from the very beginning. Still, he managed to reach his destination successfully, and his journey wasn't affected by this problem at all. How is it possible? The punctured tire was the spare one. The financial director of a big company finally persuaded new partners to sign a super important agreement. He then put this document into a folder and left it on the table in his office. When he arrived at work the next morning, the folder was gone. John gathered all the employees who were in the office at the time and questioned them. The cleaning lady said that she had been busy washing the floor and hadn't paid attention to anything around. The designer explained that he hadn't left his working place even once. What's more, being an artist, he didn't have any interest in agreement documents. The accountant admitted that he had entered John's office to have some documents signed. But once he noticed there was no one inside, he immediately left. Who took the folder with the agreement? It was the designer. John never mentioned which folder was gone. How would he know that the missing folder had an agreement inside? Eric wears either only black or only white socks. One morning, he was in a hurry getting ready for an important meeting with new partners. Suddenly, the power goes out. The guy has 10 white and 10 black socks in his drawer, but all of them are mixed. He doesn't want to look silly at work wearing different socks. If it's completely dark in the room and Eric can't see anything, how many socks should he pull out of the drawer to get himself two matching ones? Three socks are more than enough. In a set of 3 socks, he's bound to have 2 of the same color. A hungry vampire is following you in a lonely street one dark night. Suddenly, you see a house with its door wide open and decide to hide there. The vampire can't enter your shelter since you locked the door in the nick of time, but it's waiting for you outside. However, you still have some hope. There are 3 doors leading out of the house. When you open the first door, there's molten lava. No thanks. The second door leads to the room with tarantulas as large as your head. Yikes. As for the third door, you can definitely hear a huge dog barking inside that room, and you're kind of afraid of it. What should you do? Just wait till morning. Vampires can't stand daylight, and your pursuer will have to leave you alone. You're trapped in a room that's slowly getting filled with water coming from a faucet on the wall. There are no windows in the room, and the door is sealed shut. You have a mop and a big bucket. So how are you going to get yourself out of this one? Come on, just turn the faucet off. Now it's better. Jane told her boss someone had taken the document she prepared for the meeting. She added that she had noticed someone come in wearing a smart suit, gloves, and a black mask, safety first. This person also had 3 rings on their fingers. The boss didn't believe her. Why? She said the person was wearing gloves. Then how did she see 3 rings on their fingers? Jane must have simply forgotten to print those documents out. A hotel owner was visiting the construction site to see the progress. He wanted to start welcoming the guests as soon as possible and had big plans. At some point, he left his briefcase with important documents on the table. Some worker grabbed it and ran away. The hotel owner didn't see who it was, but he immediately called the police. There were 3 suspects. The architect said he had been talking on the phone, trying to get electricity for the site as there was not. The designer told the police he had been trying to find the best paint for the walls. The electrician explained he had been down in the basement trying to fix a burst light bulb. The detectives figure out who was lying. Can you? It was the electrician. How could he fix the burst light bulb if there was no electricity at the construction site at all? Ah, liar, liar, pants on fire.
2 teen sisters, Maya and Ariana, were supposed to study in the library, but one of them went to a party instead. When they came back home, their parents could immediately tell who hadn't been to the library. Can you? It was Maya. Look, there's glitter in her hair. Mr. Harris is a landlord. In his building, it's prohibited to have any pets, but he keeps hearing some barking on the 3rd floor. There are 3 apartments there, so he decides to pay a visit to everyone who lives on that floor. Mr. Walker, Ms. Clark, and Mr. Allen. Can you tell who keeps a dog? It's Mr. Allen. Take a look at the shoe rack. Some of his shoes are chewed. 4 friends were going to another city by car, but at some point, something distracted the driver, and they got in a car crash. A police officer arrived and started the investigation. He asked who had been driving, but no one took the blame. Then, the officer inspected the car. Can you tell who the driver was? The driver was the red-haired girl. There's a sweater on the driver's seat. She's the only one not wearing a jacket or sweater, so it must be hers. Mrs. Miller was waiting for a delivery, but she never got it. And since the woman had to go to work, she asked her husband to drive to the post office and ask about her package. When Mrs. Miller came back home, Mr. Miller said he'd just returned from the post office, but they said the package hadn't arrived yet. Mrs. Miller didn't believe him and claimed he hadn't driven anywhere. How did she understand it? Take a look at the car. It's all covered in snow. To go to the post office, Mr. Miller would have to clean it first. In a parallel universe, you're only allowed to have fun and eat candy. No one ever reads or studies. Mrs. Relham came back home after a long and entertaining day at the club. Her 3 daughters were supposed to have a lot of fun on their own. She asked them what they had been doing. Hannah said she'd been watching TV all day long. Ellie answered she'd spent the day at a water park. Ava told her mom she and her friends had a candy-eating contest. Still, Mrs. Relham could tell one of her daughters was lying. That daughter spent all day studying. Who was it? It was Hannah. Take a closer look at her hands. There are some ink stains. If she had actually watched TV, she wouldn't have needed a pen. In June, students of the Faculty of Economics had their econometrics exam. It was the hardest one in that semester, and everyone was worried. On the day of the exam, the students entered the classroom. Everyone was assigned to a specific seat. A professor was sure one of the students was going to cheat, so he made that person sit right in front of him. Which student was it, and how did the professor know? It's the guy with dark hair. It's June, and all the students are lightly dressed. Still, this student is wearing a sweater with long sleeves. He must be up to something. Now take a look at these 3 students, Savannah, Melody, and Scarlett. One of them managed to cheat at the exam, and no one noticed it. Can you tell who it was and how she managed to use her notes? It was Scarlett. She's wearing long boots. That's where she kept her notes. Michelle was having a house party. She noticed that her brother had disappeared and went upstairs to find him. When she neared his room, she heard laughter. Her brother was in there with some girl. But Michelle couldn't figure out who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to look for some hints. She suspected 3 girls, Lily, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Who was it? Her brother is dating Nicole. There's an earring on the couch, and Nicole is wearing only one earring, which looks exactly the same. She must have lost it. Can you tell which student in the classroom isn't a real person? The guy in the middle doesn't cast a shadow. There's definitely something fishy about him. Michael had a crush on Ellie, the girl he studied with. One day, he decided to write her a note, asking her out. Unfortunately, he didn't remember which desk was Ellie's. Can you tell which one Michael needs? Take a look at Ellie's photo. She's waving her left hand, which means she's likely left-handed. There's only one desk where the pen is to the left of the copybook. It must be Ellie's desk. A grocery store manager found out that someone had been stealing bananas from the store all the time. The man conducted his own investigation and got 3 suspects. But he couldn't accuse the customers until he was 100% sure. Take a look at these people and say who the banana thief is. Look at the guy wearing a top hat. It's a perfect place for hiding and stealing stuff. He must be the thief. Brandon and Genevieve are on their working trip to London. They decided to meet in a cafe in the evening. Now, they're both driving there. Can you tell which of them isn't smart? Brandon. In England, people drive on the left side of the road, and he's driving on the right. Early in the morning, a big sum of money went missing from the accountant's safe in the office. Only 3 people were at work at that time. Haley, the accountant, said she'd left for a couple of minutes to go to the bathroom. Eric, the software manager, claimed he'd had his lunch break and hadn't seen anything. Joseph, the cleaning man, said he'd been cleaning the 2nd floor at the time. Can you figure out who's lying? It's Eric. He couldn't have a lunch break. It was still early in the morning. Someone had been stealing food from a grocery store. The manager couldn't find out who it was and hired a detective. Look at the security camera footage for the last year and say who the thief is. It's the dark-haired pregnant lady. It's been a year and she's still pregnant. Plus, the size of her belly has never changed. It must be fake. Theo was spending the day with her boyfriend Derek. After lunch, he said he had some urgent business to deal with and left her for a couple of hours. When Derek came back, Theo realized he'd been cheating on her and broke up with him. How did she find out? Take a closer look at Derek's neck. There's a lipstick stain. It's red, while Theo is wearing pink lipstick, which means it's not hers. Mr. Roberts, one of the best surgeons in the country, came to his insurance company. The man said he'd been robbed right in the street. The assistant asked if Mr. Roberts remembered any specific details about the criminal. He said he didn't. Everything happened too fast, and he had very bad eyesight. The assistant refused to start the investigation. He said Mr. Roberts was lying. He wasn't actually robbed. Why didn't the man believe Mr. Roberts? Mr. Roberts is a surgeon, but it's not possible to work as one if you have poor eyesight. It means Mr. Roberts lied. In a small town, someone stole all the chicken nuggets from a local store. The owner called the police, and they started the investigation. There were 3 suspects who were in the store at around that time. Mrs. Wilson said her family was vegetarian. She wouldn't be interested in chicken nuggets. Mr. Martin said he'd needed to return home very fast. He had to take a conference call. He didn't have any time to waste. Mr. Thomas simply stated that he hadn't stolen anything. Can you tell who the thief is? The thief is Mrs. Wilson. She said her family was vegetarian, but behind her back, there's a freshly cooked chicken on the table. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After it started to get dark, the girl tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked the woman to help her find her way home. The witch only agreed to do so on one condition. She gave Esme a piece of string and said,
"Put it anywhere. If I can step over it, I'll keep you with me forever. If I don't manage to do it, I'll show you the way home."
What can Esme do? Esme should put the string right next to the wall. This way, the witch won't be able to step over it. Take a close look at the picture and figure out who the thief is. Look at this guy. His right hand is inside the woman's bag.
Here's a quick joke. 2 geniuses are walking down the street. One genius says to the other, "Hey, you look down in the dumps. What's the gray matter?" I didn't say it was a good joke. Okay, you big brain person you, here's another challenging quandary of riddles to solve. Ted is a lucky game show winner. He can pick one of the 3 prizes: a brand new Mercedes, a Louis Vuitton purse, or a MacBook. Which one should he choose? Think carefully, he can only get one prize. Look at the Mercedes. Its logo is wrong, so it must be fake. The same goes for the purse. That's what Louis Vuitton's real logo looks like. But the MacBook seems to be okay, at least at first sight. So let's go for it. A car thief appeared in a little town. Every night, a car went missing. First, it was Mr. Smith's red vehicle. The next day, it was Mr. Holmes' pink car. And last night, it was Mrs. Tanner's white Ford. The town's detective is going to stop the criminal. Take a look at the 4 cars that are still out there and help the man understand which car is going to be stolen next. There are 4 cars left: yellow, blue, green, and black. The first car that was stolen was red. The word red has 3 letters. The next one was pink. There are 4 letters in pink. The third vehicle was white, and the word white has 5 letters. It means the next car to be stolen is going to be yellow, because there are 6 letters in this word, as best I can count. Mr. Jones was going on vacation. In the evening of his last day at work, he cleaned up his office and left, taking the key with him. When the man came back 2 weeks later, he immediately realized someone had broken into his office while he had been gone. How did he figure it out? Mr. Jones cleaned everything and took out the trash. But have a look at the garbage can now. There's some paper inside. Esme got lost in the forest. She was wandering around all day long and couldn't find a way out. Finally, at dusk, she saw a spooky house where a witch lived. Esme had nowhere else to go, so she entered the house and asked the witch to help her. The witch offered Esme to play a game. I'll tell you a riddle. If you get the answer right, I'll take you out of the forest. But if you make a mistake, I'll keep you here as my maid forever." Esme had no choice but to agree. Here's what the witch said. "It has cities, but doesn't have a single house. It has mountains, but not a single tree. It has water, but no fish. What is it?" Can you help Esme? It's a map. Students got an assignment for their summer break. They had to start learning a new language. It could be any language they liked. When a new semester started, the teacher asked the students how it had been going. Mark said he had been learning Brazilian and enjoying it. Genevieve said she'd chosen Ukrainian. Ben said he had been learning Arabic. It turned out to be very hard, but interesting. But the teacher didn't believe one of the students. Who was lying? She didn't believe Mark, who had said he had been studying Brazilian. There's no Brazilian language. People speak Portuguese in Brazil. Oliver came back home and found a love letter in his mailbox. It was a very sweet one, but the sender didn't write their name. However, there was a little note at the end. J+1, B-1, R+2, H-3. Oliver has 4 suspects: Jane, Alex, Leah, and Kate. Can you tell which one of them wrote the love letter to Oliver? The note is the hint, of course, and the alphabet is the key. J+1 means the next letter in the alphabet, which is K. B-1 means one letter before B, which is A. 2 letters after R is T, and finally 3 letters before H, there's E. So, the secret admirer is Kate. Well, a very rich gentleman was having his 3-month vacation. 3 months? His mansion was burgled. The police were notified and the detectives started the investigation. There were 3 people caught on the security camera. They were interrogated. Max, the owner's old friend, said he had come several times to collect the mail. Gwen, the housemaid, said she had visited 3 days before to clean the house. Ronnie, the gardener, said he had been coming every week to take care of the garden. All of them denied stealing anything, but the detective didn't believe one of them. Who was lying? He didn't believe Gwen. She said she'd cleaned the house 3 days before. But look around. There's dust and dark stains everywhere. It doesn't look like it's been cleaned recently, so she must be lying. A long time ago, in Norway, a princess was taken away. She was locked in a small room on a tiny island in the middle of a huge lake. Even if she managed to get out of the room, she wouldn't be able to reach the shore. On the island, there were no trees or any tool she could use. It means she couldn't build a boat. And still, half a year later, the princess managed to escape and returned home all by herself. How did she do it? It happened in Norway. It's cold there in the winter. As soon as the lake froze over, the princess walked on the ice and escaped. Mrs. Brown called the hospital and said her husband had been hurt. When the doctor arrived, she led him to the bathroom. The man was lying on the floor inside. She said the bathroom door had been opened, and she saw everything when it happened. Her husband was washing his hands but slipped and hit his head on the sink. The doctor didn't believe her and called the police. Why? Look at how the man's lying. His head is on the opposite side of the sink. He couldn't have fallen like that. A tired mother of 3 daughters came home late after work. She found the kitchen all messy. It seemed one of her daughters made a sandwich but didn't clean after herself. The mother walked upstairs and found all three of them doing their homework. She asked who had made the sandwich, but all the girls, Hannah, Della, and Emily, denied making one. Still, the mother could tell who was lying. Look at the kitchen and the girls carefully. Who do you think is guilty? And how did the mother understand who was lying? There's some butter on the right side of the knife. It means the person who made the sandwich is left-handed. There's only one left-handed girl in the family, and that's Emily. So, it must have been her. All the money from the city's bank was stolen right in the middle of the day, but no one noticed that. Several days later, the room where the money used to be stored was found completely empty. There was just one note saying 7718. The police arrested the three most known criminals in the city, Bill, Mark, and Cole. But the officers didn't know which of them was guilty. They invited a famous detective to crack the mysterious note, and he managed to do it immediately. Can you do it too? Turn the paper upside down. This way, the numbers turn into a name, Bill. He must be the culprit. Now wait. If Bill isn't quite that dumb to name himself, did someone else frame Bill for the robbery? Hey, just thinking out loud here. Moving on. Devian found his friend Aaron in his room. The guy was poisoned. Devian called the police. When the officers arrived, he told them he had been walking past Oliver's house and noticed the light in his room was on. He came up to the window to check who was inside, his friend or his brother. It was cold and there was frost on the window, so he wiped it away to see who was inside. When Devian saw Oliver lying on the floor, he called the police. The officers didn't believe the guy and immediately arrested him. Why? Devian said he'd wiped the frost off the window to see better, but he couldn't possibly do it. Frost forms on the inner surface of the window. Now, let's check how well you know logos. In each pair, you'll have to pick the correct one. What does the Apple logo look like? Try to recall the one on Ted's MacBook. The second logo is correct. Okay, here's Instagram. Do you remember what its icon looks like? Yes, this small dot must be in the right corner, so the first logo is correct. I bet you see it every day. What's the real Google logo? It's the second one. First the red O, then the yellow one. Which one is the correct Burger King logo? Of course, it's the second one. Now I'm hungry. If you play video games, you must know it. If not, well, try yourself. Which PlayStation logo is correct? The second one. Okay, now, a tough one. Which TikTok logo is correct? It's the first one. Check it out if you don't believe me. A super wealthy businessman, Mr. Carl Jenkins, has been taken and left locked up all alone in a dark room. His phone's almost run out of charge, so he can only write one message. He knows that someone might spy on his phone, so he decided to write a message with a code to a high school friend, John Smith, who runs a detective agency. He remembered that in high school they would cipher messages to each other, so he used the same technique. The message was this. Can you guess what it means? Back in high school, they would shift one letter to the right each time they needed to write a secret code. To decipher it, you need to go one letter to the left. Their alphabet looks like this. The message is, it was Eric. Having read the message, John knew immediately who his friend was talking about. Eric is the financial director of Carl's company. He had seen him once at a party a couple of years ago, so he knew what he looked like. John decided to investigate this case himself and help his friend out. He was sure there was something secret in Carl's mansion. Somehow he thought he knew that Eric would have the key to the mansion. The receptionist, Kelly, said he would always have lunch with different business partners at 2 p.m. sharp in his favorite cafe. When the detective drove up to the cafe, he saw Eric, the man with a beard, discussing business with someone. Either of them had a briefcase next to them, and the briefcases looked similar to each other. John was waiting for Eric and the second guy to leave the cafe. They went to the car, got in, and left both briefcases on the back seat. The detective followed them. They left the car in a parking lot, and luckily, they were careless enough to leave the car open. Which briefcase should the detective grab? The one that looks brand new. While they were walking to the car, the detective spotted a few scratches on the second man's briefcase. Both briefcases were locked with a cipher. Not to make the whole thing suspicious, the detective decided not to take it and cracked the code right in the car. Can you help him open the briefcase? The code is 000. The briefcase is brand new, and Eric probably didn't have time to set a code on it yet. Plus, Eric's the one who leaves the car open and unattended in a parking lot, so no wonder he uses a default code for his briefcase. Now that the detective has the key, he heads to the mansion. The front door isn't a problem with the key in hand. The study is upstairs. He's been there before, so he remembers the stairs leading up have a secret. If you step on the wrong stair, you'll instantly fall to the basement and won't be able to escape from it yourself. What step should John mind? It's the one with the slit in the middle. When you step on it, it opens, and you get into a dark room with bats and spiders. Yikes! Alright, John is finally at the study door, and Carl would always use buttons to open it. You've got only one try. There are 3 buttons, yellow, green, and blue. Which one should the detective choose if he knows that Carl is a big fan of painting? A combination of blue and yellow gives green, so the door opens. Green light for our detective. He finally reaches the safe with top-secret documents that could help him find out the truth. Obviously, just like any other safe, it's locked with a code. It also has a warning. You can enter the code only once. If you hit the wrong code, the safe locks up forever. He's looking around for a hint, and voila! John is right. On the desk, he sees a note. It says, "Secret code," and has a combination of 3 digits, 3, something, and 1. The digit in the middle can't be seen since there's an ink stain right on it. Can you crack the code with one attempt only? The code is 371. The detective thought the code was used frequently, so the button must have been a bit worn out. He was right. Since he knew the beginning and the end, he only needed to find one more worn button. Alright, now he's got the top-secret documents he needed for his investigation. He looks through all the papers and finally finds something that looks like the document he actually needed. To take it as a hard proof, he needs to find one which is not fake. There are 4 copies. They look almost the same, but only one is real. Can you guess which one? It's the one in the upper left corner. It has a stamp, a signature, and it says agreement. The one next to it looks the same, but it has a spelling mistake. It says agreement. Other copies lack either a stamp or a signature. So the detective takes a closer look at this agreement and sees something about a painting bought in an auction. He suddenly understands that his friend Carl was taken so that someone could sneak into his mansion and grab that super expensive painting. He's looking at the wall with all the paintings Carl collected and realizes that no painting is missing. There are as many nails in the wall as there are paintings. Still, there's something strange about one of them. Can you spot what's wrong here? Even though all the paintings are present, there's one that lacks a frame. According to the agreement, the painting has been recently bought, and an art dealer helped Carl pick it. The expert was an honest man, and he helped Carl make sure all the other paintings in his collection were real. This time, the painting turned out to be nothing but a copy. Why did the expert suggest that Carl buy it? Although the painting cost nothing, its frame was a beautiful and expensive piece of art. The one who grabbed it definitely knew that. Now it's all clear. John has to find both Carl and the precious frame. He goes outside, trying to deduce where the person who took Carl went. Carl is looking at all the tracks on the ground. He needs to follow one of them to understand where to look for Carl. Where should he go? He's got to follow the tracks going to the left. There are 3 sets of tracks here. The first belonged to John's car. The second set belongs to a 2-wheel vehicle, and since the tracks are really thin, they were left by a bike. It seems impossible to take someone somewhere on a bike, so these must belong to a mail carrier who comes every day to bring the letters. The last set of tracks definitely belongs to a large car, so John should follow it. He's lucky and there are no turns, so he's just going straight. Half an hour later, he sees something like a castle. He drives up to it and he sees 3 moats in front of him. Here's the first one, a row full of metal stakes. How can John jump over it safely? There's a small hot air balloon nearby. John has to untie it and light the lamp to take off. Since the next moat is on fire, John thinks it's unsafe to fly over it because the air balloon doesn't fly high enough and the lamp doesn't have enough oil to go on for long. Still, he managed to cross the moat with fire easily. How did he do it? He took the sand from the air balloon's ballast and sprinkled it on the fire, extinguishing it. The last moat was filled with scalding hot lava. It took John some time to figure out how to cross it, but he managed to do it safely. How? There were a lot of stones around him. The lava torrent wasn't deep at all, so throwing stones at it, he made a tiny path to hop on. The castle was rather small inside, so the hardest thing was to actually get into it. When he entered the hall, John saw 3 doors. Above the doors, there was a sign. It said, "One of the doors leads to a labyrinth no one ever escaped." One of the doors is the exit. If you enter it, you'll have to cross all the 3 moats all over again. One of the doors has what you're looking for. When John looked at the doors, he knew immediately where his friend was. Which door did he choose? The handles were made of shiny metal, which looks cool but gathers all the fingerprints. The only door with fingerprints is the one on the left. John opens the door and sees his friend. Carl rushes out of that dark room, and while heading to the exit, they spot a few frames. Which one is Carl's? The rectangular one. The painting was rectangular, and the 2 other frames are square. The 2 friends get out of the castle, get in the car, and head to the police department. There, an officer's waiting for them. They have 3 suspects who could have possibly taken the exquisite frame. Carl and John enter the room separately. Still, they choose the same person. Who did they choose? The man on the right. Carl chooses him because it's the art expert. John chooses him because he saw him with Carl having lunch. Wow, seems like this expert's not going to work with Carl ever again. Okay, Sherlock, you're up. Eric, Samantha, and Charlotte were playing volleyball on the beach. It was pretty hot, and one of the friends invited the others to go swimming in the sea. One of them can't go swimming because, well, they're a robot. Okay, can you guess who? It's Samantha. First, she's the only one who's not sweaty or red in the cheeks because of the heat. Plus, it might seem like she's wearing a small necklace, but it's actually a USB port. It helps her stay plugged in, you know. Jane was riding the bus back from work. She was tired after a long day, but she couldn't sit down because it was so packed. Some of the other passengers were acting strangely, and she was worried that they might have been zombies. Which passengers are zombies? There are 2 zombies on the bus. The man on the right has a bandage on his arm, and the woman next to the window is making groaning noises. I can get off here. No, really. Josh loves to make bets with his friends. Last Friday, he bet them that he could place a bottle in the middle of the room and easily crawl into it. This time, nobody thought he had any chance of completing the challenge. So, Josh's friends were certain they would win. But somehow, Josh won the bet again. How did he manage to do it? He said he could place a bottle in the room and crawl into it. He didn't mention whether he was going to crawl into the bottle or the room, though. So he crawled into the room without any problem and won the bet. Oh, that crazy Josh. On the table, there's a row of 6 cups. The first 3 are empty, but cups number 4, 5, and 6 are full. You need to change the order so that the empty and full cups alternate. You can only touch one cup, and you can't push or move the cups with the help of another cup. How do you do it? Grab cup number 5 and pour the water into cup 2, then put it back. Mary was walking in the woods and saw a really fancy castle in the distance. It was getting late, so she thought she might ask to stay the night there. When she knocked on the door, though, it was answered by a troll, and he really didn't like intruders. He captured her and locked her up in a dungeon with 2 guards. The troll told her that she could escape if she solved a puzzle. There are 2 doors in the room. One is locked and the other leads to freedom. The guards know which door will set Mary free, but she can ask them only one question. One of the guards always tells the truth and the other always lies. I have friends like that. Mary doesn't know which one can be trusted and only has one chance to win her freedom. What question should she ask? If Mary says, "If I ask your colleague to show me the way to freedom, what door will it be?" No matter which guard replies, they will show the locked door. One will lie and show the wrong door, and the one who doesn't lie would also show the wrong door, since it would be chosen by the one who lies. This way, Mary knows the wrong door, and she needs to choose the other one. You have 2 ropes and a box of matches. If you light both sides of the rope, it'll burn for 60 minutes. How can you use these ropes to measure 45 minutes? You need to burn one of the ropes from both sides. At the same time, you set light to one side of the second rope. When the first rope burns down, the second rope will still have 30 minutes to go. Now you need to set on fire the second end of the rope. It'll burn 2 times faster, and you'll burn both ropes in 45 minutes. And what's going to happen in 45 minutes is still a mystery. Everyone in town thought Jack was silly, because every time someone offered him a choice between a 50-cent coin or a $1 bill, he would always choose the 50-cent coin. People all over town would give him the same offer to see if he would ever learn. He never grabbed the bill one time. The people in the town didn't realize that Jack was actually a genius. What was so smart about what Jack was doing? Jack was actually really smart because he got everyone in the town to shower him with free money. As long as he continued to choose the less valuable option, people would come and try this trick on him over and over again. See that car? Jack's been refusing $1 bills for over 10 years now, and he saved up enough money to get a car. 3 men were trying to decide who was the smartest among them. A random passerby offered to help. He said he would give them a riddle, and whoever managed to crack it could call themselves the smartest. He said, "You see these 5 caps in my hands? 3 of them are black and 2 are white. Close your eyes." The 3 men closed their eyes. He put a black cap on each of them and hid the 2 white caps in the bag. Now you can open your eyes. Whoever guesses the color of the cap he is wearing is the smartest. The men spent ages looking at each other, trying to crack the riddle. Suddenly, one of them worked it out and shouted, "I'm wearing a black cap." Now, how did he guess? Well, he didn't actually guess. He tried to think logically, but there was no logical answer. So he looked at his reflection in a nearby puddle. You find yourself in a photo gallery. After looking at the wall, you realize that one of the pictures doesn't belong. You see a raccoon, a llama, a football, and a balloon. Can you tell which is the odd one out? You have 7 seconds to guess. It's the llama picture. The other 3 objects have 2 double letters in their names, but the llama only has 1 double. There's a barrel of water in the yard. You look inside and say that it's more than half full, but your friend argues that it's less than half full. How do you figure out who's right without using any tools or removing water from the barrel? Tilt the barrel so the water just about touches its rim. If you can see the bottom, the barrel's less than half full. If the base is still covered with water, it's more than half full. You find yourself in the middle of a forest with 3 paths in front of you. One is covered with scalding lava. Another is littered with sharp nails and broken glass. And the third path is so cold that it feels like you're in Antarctica. Which path should you choose? Pick the third path. It's bound to warm up soon. It's so close to the lava that the ice will melt in a few seconds. John was at home sitting in his chair with a book. All of a sudden, his wife's super expensive statue fell and broke in their bedroom. He ran into the room in time to see a stranger jump out the window and run away. John tried to chase him, but his glasses fogged up because of the cold, so he couldn't identify the intruder. When the police arrived, they listened to his story and immediately knew he was lying. Why were they so sure? Anyone who wears glasses knows that they don't fog up when you go from a warm room to the cold outdoors. It's the other way around. The man made the story up because he didn't want to admit that he'd broken the statue himself. One day, a man got caught in the pouring rain. Unfortunately, he had nothing to keep himself dry, not even a hat or an umbrella. Somehow, not a single hair on his head got wet. Why is this? Well, the man was bald. You have 3 matches. Can you make a 6 out of them without breaking them into pieces? Who said the number has to be a standard 6? The matches made a perfect Roman numeral 3 right from the get-go. So all you have to do is push the bottoms of the first 2 matches together into a V, and you've got a Roman numeral 6. Let's imagine you don't know what an elephant looks like. One day, you're going on a safari to watch animals with your friends. One of them points at a rhino and tells you it's an elephant. The other shows you a hippo and claims that it's an elephant. Who would you believe and why? You didn't know what an elephant looked like, but that doesn't mean you didn't know what a hippo or a rhino looked like either. You wouldn't believe either of your friends. It's your first day in the new office. Some colleagues don't seem very friendly, and you can't understand why. They also act strangely, never have coffee breaks, and work at least 12 hours a day. A secretary at the reception desk tells you that their company hires robots because they work so hard and aren't addicted to coffee. She tells you to try to stay away from them and avoid making conversation because they aren't programmed to talk to people. It's quite easy to tell who's a robot. Can you guess which one's the robot out of Anna, Mike, and Lucy? It's Mike. He's the only one of the 3 with a switch on his right. Okay, you ready? Oliver was walking near the river in the evening when a group of people dressed in black caught him. All of them were wearing masks. Their leader offered Oliver 3 options. They could throw the guy into the sea with hungry piranhas, he could choose to end up in the ocean swarming with sharks, or he could opt for a river with hippos. What should Oliver choose to survive? Piranhas only live in freshwater. The guy should pick the sea with the piranhas. An expedition set up camp in the middle of a desert. They were planning to spend several days in that place. But when they woke up, their truck had disappeared. Luckily, they had enough food to last a week, but no power and little water. But there was more to come. 3 days later, one of the team members disappeared. The leader of the expedition questioned the remaining people. Michael said he had been wandering around, trying to find water. Emily said she had been playing games on her smartphone. Evelyn claimed they had been sleeping all day long to save energy. And Henry said he had been preparing his research paper in his tent. Now, who's lying? Emily. In 3 days, her phone would have already run out of battery. There are 100 books on a shelf. To count off 10 of them, you'll need 10 seconds. How much time you'll spend counting off 70 books? It will take you 30 seconds. You'll need this time to count off 30 books, and the remaining ones will add up to 70. Sophia's sister, Chloe, visited her on Saturday. The women had a meal and talked about their lives. Chloe had been promoted. Her husband had recently presented her a diamond ring, and they were going to have a vacation in Hawaii. Chloe didn't have such amazing news. She only listened to her sister and complained about life. Right after lunch, Chloe felt unwell. She paled and lost consciousness. Sophia called an ambulance. They rushed Chloe to a hospital and hardly had enough time to save her life. It turned out the woman had been poisoned. The police came to Sophia to ask her a couple of questions. She was shocked. "We ate the same food. I cooked chicken and made a vegetable salad. Nothing exotic." After examining the food, the police officers arrested Sophia for trying to poison her sister. But how did she do it? The poison was in the bottle with the salad dressing. Chloe added some vinaigrette to her dish, while Sophia didn't touch the bottle. The moral? Stop complaining so much. A small cafe in Boston is called 9 Lanterns, but there are only 7 lanterns hanging outside. The owner knows about this mistake and can easily correct it, but he doesn't. Why? When the wind took away 2 lanterns some time ago, the man wanted to replace them. But before he could do it, he noticed that more people started to come into his cafe. They told him 2 lanterns were missing, and then stayed to drink coffee. Jackson came to visit his friend Aiden, who he hadn't seen in ages. They had a great time, gossiping and drinking tea. But Jackson had completely forgotten Aiden had one quirk. He loved making up riddles and never let anyone leave his house without cracking 1 or 2 of his newest ones. This time, his question was, "What do you swallow that can swallow you?" Can you help Jackson get home? Hey, it's already late. The answer is water. Jackson was smart enough to know he won't be able to leave Aiden's house after just 1 riddle. True to his expectations, another riddle was waiting for him. What is lower with a head on top than without it? Jackson took his sweet time, but eventually he realized the right answer was a pillow. Could he go home now? Apparently not yet, but Aiden promised it would be the last riddle for the evening. He told his friend, Hannah's birthday is on January 23rd, but she always celebrates it in the summer. Why? Luckily, Jackson had just returned from his trip to Australia. He immediately realized that Hannah lived in the southern hemisphere. There, January is the hottest month of the year. Students knew they would have an exam on Friday, but their strict professor didn't tell them the exact time. When one guy gathered enough courage to ask about it, he got a weird reply. If 11 plus 2 equals 1, 10 plus 6 equals 4. If you manage to figure out the answer, you won't miss the exam. Do you know when the students should meet with their professor? At 4 p.m. 11 o'clock plus 2 hours is 1 p.m. Then 10 o'clock and 6 hours is 4 p.m. James called his wife Mia and told her he would be at home by 8 o'clock. They didn't plan anything special for that evening, but when he arrived at 2 minutes past 8, the woman was furious. Why was she so angry? Mia thought her husband would come home by 8 p.m., but he appeared at 8:02 a.m. the next morning. Uh-oh. Look at these 2 ladies. They both seem to be filthy rich, but only one of them actually is. Can you figure out who's fake rich? It's the girl on the left. She's taking a photo with a luxury car in the background. But there's someone in the driver's seat, and this person looks rather shocked. One elderly man could only use a public telephone to make his calls. Once the phone stopped working, the man informed the phone company. He waited and waited, but no one came to fix the phone. Several days later, the man visited the company again and said something. The day after, the phone was working again. What did the man say? He said people use the phone to make calls without paying. Look at this picture attentively. What's wrong with it? The pitcher the woman is holding is empty. Then where's the milk coming from? Mark has always been jealous of his friend Liam's achievements. This week, they're both taking part in a battle of wits. Mark decides to do everything possible to win this time. And the first task is to guess the word. It has 7 letters and it is very heavy. But if Mark takes away 2 letters, he'll get 8. If he takes away 1 letter, he'll get 80. What word is it? The first riddle is a success. Mark finds the right word. It's weighty. The next question is even trickier. A man went around the world in a ship, and still he was always inside of land. How is it possible? It doesn't take Mark long to figure out the man was in a spaceship orbiting Earth. The next thing Mark knows, he's locked in a room. Wow. There are 4 doors there. He's entered through one of them, and he can't use it again. The first door leads to the room with high-voltage wires hanging above the wet floor. Behind the second door, there's a water-filled room swarming with piranhas. And the third door hides a room where acid, flesh-melting rain is falling from the ceiling. Which door is more or less safe to enter? Mark opted for the first door and didn't regret it. It was safe because he didn't let his body come into contact with the wires and the wet floor at the same time. It turned out the next task was the last one in this competition. Mark was looking forward to finding out the winner, but first he had to do some brain work. The world's tallest tower is finally finished. It took 5 years to build it. Every next year, the construction doubled in height. How many years did it take the tower to reach half its current height? Four years. If the tower grew twice taller every year, it had to be half of its final height a year before it was completed. And if you're wondering about the results of the competition, it ended in a tie. Duh. Luna has 2 friends, Jack and Owen. On her birthday, the girl wants to go to the movies with the guys, but they don't know each other and Luna's worried they might feel uncomfortable. But there's also another problem. She spent way too much money this month. But if she invites the guys, she's going to pay. Now, she's trying to understand what is cheaper, to invite both guys at the same time or go to the movies with each of them in turn. Can you help Luna? It'll cost the girl less to invite her 2 friends at the same time. This way, she'll only have to buy 3 tickets. If she goes with each of them, she'll pay for 4 tickets. It was a sunny summer day without a single cloud in the sky. The ship was in the harbor. There were many people on the shore. They gathered there to look at the vessel. Suddenly, the ship started to sink. There was nothing wrong with it, and all of its systems were functioning correctly. The weather was fine and the sea was calm, but the ship still disappeared in the blink of an eye. What happened? Well, nothing unexpected. Submarines are supposed to travel underwater. So check this out. 3 men are sitting around a table drinking coffee. They all look alike, but only 2 of them are brothers. The third one just doesn't belong at all because he's an alien. Who is it? It's the man sitting on the right. He's got 12 fingers. Yeah, the one sitting in the center has some weird ears, but look at the family portrait on the wall. His dad has the very same ears. Gabrielle is a shop assistant in a department store. Right now, there are 3 people in the fitting rooms. There's Jessica, the woman wearing a green dress, Sean, a man wearing a leather jacket and skinny jeans, and Alex, the man who's trying on a larger-sized pair of jeans that Gabrielle just brought him. One of the clients is an alien. Help Gabrielle figure it out. Who's the alien? It's Alex. Take a closer look at his feet. Only a reptile or an alien would have feet like that. Jessica was walking through the dark woods. Suddenly, she saw a castle. Probably belonged to a witch or something. She was pretty curious and wanted to snoop around, but the door was locked. There was a note with a secret code attached to the gate, but she still needed to decipher it. If you want to enter my castle, crack this code. Can you crack this code? The answer is witch. 2 stars after wing means you need to get rid of the last 2 letters. Same goes for the word tea. For the word chair, you need to cut off the last 3 letters. See? Eric went to the supermarket and grabbed 2 oranges and a watermelon. It cost him $6. Helen went to the same supermarket. She grabbed a lemon, an orange, and a watermelon. She paid $8. The oranges, lemons, and watermelons all have different prices. What's more expensive, an orange or a lemon? The lemon's more expensive. Eric had 2 oranges and a watermelon, which cost him $6. The 2 fruits have different prices, so it can't be 2 plus 2 plus 2. The only possible combination is 1 plus 1 plus 4. So the watermelon cost $4. Helen paid $4 for the watermelon and $1 for the orange. So now we know a lemon costs $3. David and Hannah got stranded on a tiny uninhabited island. They had no radio or cell phones, so they couldn't call for help. There were no trees on the island, so they couldn't even make a smoke signal. Suddenly, Hannah noticed a plane circling the sky, searching for them. But it was flying too high. There was no way the pilot could see them. That's when she got a bright idea. Soon after, the plane spotted them and picked them up. What was Hannah's idea? She used rocks to spell out SOS on the sand. 3 turtles are walking one behind the other. The first one says, "There are 2 turtles behind me." The second one says, "There's 1 turtle behind me and another one right in front of me." The third one says, "There are 2 turtles in front of me and 1 more right behind me." Now, how's that possible? Well, they're walking in a circle, very slowly. On a farm, there's a cow, 2 horses, and a cat. Farmer Jack drives up to his farm accompanied by his dog, Fluffy. How many feet are there on the farm? There are only 2. Cows and horses have hooves. Dogs and cats have paws. Only Jack has feet. You find yourself trapped in a medieval castle, far away from civilization. Boy, your vacation isn't turning out as planned. You can't jump out the window because it's too high off the ground. The only tree near the window doesn't look sturdy enough for you to climb on down. However, there are 3 doors, one of which can lead you to freedom. Behind the first door is a fierce fire. Behind the second door are hundreds of venomous snakes. And behind the third door, there's a pitch-black maze. Who knows what surprises are waiting for you there? So, which door should you choose? The third door. You just need to break off a tree branch, turn it into a torch by lighting it in the first room, and go through the maze. At least you'll be able to see where you're going. Maria lives in Paris, and once every 2 weeks she goes to Saint-Tropez to see her grandmother. She bought a ticket from the machine, finished her coffee, and headed to the train. But this weekend, something went wrong. She didn't make it to Saint-Tropez. Why not? She bought the wrong ticket. It says Saint-Tropez, Paris, but she needed Paris, Saint-Tropez. When she tried to get on the train, the conductor immediately told her she had the wrong ticket, and she just didn't have enough time to change it. Emma's a big fan of all things pink. She lives in a 1-story pink house. She has a pink cat, a pink dog, a pink hamster, pink walls, pink doors, and even a pink fridge. What color are her stairs? She doesn't have stairs. She lives in a 1-story house. But that house sure gets a lot of stares from the neighbors. Mark got to take part in a TV show where he had to answer some tough questions. He was doing really great and managed to answer 14 out of 15 questions. He was real nervous. Only one more question and he'd hit the grand prize, $1 million. What is as large as an elephant but doesn't even weigh an ounce? Mark shouted out an answer, and now he's a millionaire. What was his guess? It's shadow. It's as large as an elephant, but it's weightless. Ice melts when you heat it up. But if you heat me, I solidify. You have 7 seconds to figure out what I am. I'm an egg. Hey, don't crack me up. Paulo was on a mission to take some nature pics for his blog. As he was walking through the forest, he fell into a deep pit. He tried to climb out, but when he grabbed onto a rock, it broke off and water started to pour in. The pit was filling up fast. Paulo saw a deflated ball, an empty barrel, and a piece of wooden board. What should he use to get out of the pit? The deflated ball is too small and has a slit in one side. The wooden board wouldn't support his weight. The best option is the empty barrel. It might just keep Paulo afloat. Anthony majored in accounting at the university. His roommates wanted to test his intelligence. They took 3 envelopes and wrote some messages on them. Then, they put the answers to Anthony's upcoming exam in one of the envelopes. Only one envelope has a truthful message written on it. The other 2 are lies. Anthony isn't allowed to open the envelopes before choosing. The first message read, "There are no exam answers here." The second read, "The exam answers are here." And the third message read, "The exam answers aren't in the second envelope." Which envelope has the exam answers in it? The first envelope has the answers in it. The first and second envelopes are lies. The third one's telling the truth. A man was driving along a country road when one of his tires burst. While changing it, he accidentally lost all 4 wheel nuts. The road was deserted and the driver was afraid he'd be stuck out there all night. But an old lady walking by said something to him that changed his luck for the better. What advice did she give him? She told him to remove one nut from each of the other wheels and use them for the fourth tire. This way, he could get to the nearest service station. King Archibald had no one who could inherit his throne. That's why he decided to hold a contest to find a worthy successor. He gave a seed to every participant and announced that the person who grew the healthiest and most beautiful plant would become the next king or queen. On the final day of the competition, the king saw hundreds of people with plants of all sizes and shapes, but he ignored them all. He ended up choosing a lady holding a pot with nothing in it but moist dirt. How come she won? The king was a kind and honest man and wanted his heir to have the same qualities. He gave the participants tiny pebbles, not seeds. That's how he figured out the lady was the only honest one there. 4 men are lined up on several steps, all of them facing in the same direction. A brick wall separates the 4th man from the rest. Man 1 can see man 2 and 3. Man 2 can see man 3. All man 3 sees is the wall, and man 4 can't see anyone. They're all wearing hats, and they know that 2 of the hats are white and 2 are black. Which man will be the first to figure out and shout out the color of the hat he's wearing? Obviously, the men aren't allowed to turn around, talk to each other, or take their hats off. It'll be man 2. Man 3 and man 4 can't see any other hats. Man 1 sees one black hat and one white hat, so his hat can be either white or black. Man 2 only sees one black hat, but he realizes that if he were also wearing a black hat, Man 1 would know his hat was white. And since Man 1 hasn't said anything, Man 2 must be wearing a white hat. And if you figured all that out, well, my hat's off to you. You ready? Here's another brain-busting workout for you, and off we go. After classes, Margot was studying in the library. At one point, she left for the bathroom. When the girl returned, she found out her wallet was gone. Margot immediately called the police. The librarian said she'd seen some guy, but she had poor eyesight and couldn't remember what he looked like. After listening to her vague description, the police officers questioned 3 students. Owen said he had been studying and hadn't even left his desk until the police arrived. Finn said he'd seen the girl but never really paid attention to her. He was looking for some books. Lucas said he'd been busy talking to his friend on the phone. He hadn't seen anything. Can you figure out who stole the wallet? It was Luca. He said he'd been talking on the phone, but it's prohibited in the library. If he had used his phone, he'd have been immediately kicked out. So, he's lying. During a casual walk deep in the forest, Esme got lost. After hours of wandering, she saw a witch's house. Esme asked the elderly woman to show her the way back. The witch refused, but she was in a good mood and offered a deal. She gave Esme 3 apples. 2 of them were poisoned and 1 was okay to eat. The girl had to pick 1 apple and bite into it. If she didn't get poisoned, the witch would show her the way home. Esme was a smart girl and managed to do it. How did she know which apple to pick? In one apple, there was a worm, which means it was safe to eat. A student was having an exam and he was about to fail it. The professor decided to give him one more chance and asked the last question. It was, "What's my oldest daughter's name?" The student was puzzled. The professor decided the question was too hard and gave the guy a hint. He wrote down 3 numbers, 58, 3, and 11. Can you help the student answer the question? It's a chemistry class. The riddle must be related to this subject. Have a look at the periodic table. The 58th element is cerium, or Ce. The third element is lithium, Li. And the 11th element is sodium, or Na. If you put all of them together, you'll get the name selena. The professor liked the game. When another student was struggling with his task, he gave him another puzzle. The man said, "I have daughters. All of them, except 2, have dark hair. All of them, except 2, have blonde hair. And all of them, except 2, have red hair. How many daughters do I have?" Can you help the student out? This time, the riddle has nothing to do with chemistry. Pure logic. The professor has 3 daughters. One of them has dark hair, the second is blonde, and the third daughter has red hair. Ben was walking in the park at night when someone knocked him out and stole all his stuff. The guy went to the police. 3 people, Cole, Jerry, and Bernard, were in the park at that time. They got arrested. The detective gave each of them a marker and asked them to write their names on the whiteboard. As soon as they finished, he immediately arrested the right person. Who was guilty, and how did the detective find it out? It was Jerry. Ben was hit from the right. It means the person who did it was left-handed. Among the 3 suspects, that's only Jerry. Really? Ben and Jerry? I think I need some ice cream. A member of an expedition to the South Pole found himself in a frozen cave. He didn't remember what had happened, but he knew he had to get out. The man saw 3 doors and a note saying what was behind each of them. Behind the first door, there was a hungry polar bear. Behind the second door, there was a room filled with poisonous gas. And behind the third, there was a room with sharp icicles falling from the ceiling every second. Which door should the man choose to survive? He should pick the first door. He's at the South Pole. There are no polar bears there. After classes, Nora stayed at the university. She needed to finish her project. She was sitting in the hallway. Soon she got hungry. The girl went to grab some food and left all her stuff behind. When Nora returned, she checked her things and called the police. She told them what had happened and reported her wallet stolen. There were 3 other students nearby. All of them were questioned. Kennedy said she had been texting her friends. Ethan said, "I did sit close to Nora for a while, but I didn't see or touch her wallet." Gabriella said she had been in the classroom and just walked out a couple minutes before. The detective listened to them and left without arresting anyone. Why? The detective remembered that Nora had gone to get some food. It means the wallet was with her and couldn't be stolen. The girl lied. 3 women, Sarah, Milla, and Eleanor, went shopping. 2 of them are pregnant, and 1 is a professional watermelon thief. Yeah, I know, but just humor me. Can you tell which one stole the watermelon? It's Milla. She's wearing heels. It's not the kind of shoes pregnant women would wear. Aurora was spending her summer in the countryside. She often took long walks in the forest alone. One day, she saw a huge mansion. It was obvious no one lived there, so she entered the house. It was dusty inside, but still beautiful. Aurora took some pictures and left the place. When the girl came back home, she looked through her photos. She wanted to pick the best ones to post on her social media, but then she saw one of the photos and screamed. Take a careful look at this photo. Can you see what scared her so much? Aurora noticed she, herself, was in the photo. But it's impossible. She was alone in the house. Stella and Adeline were sisters. Their grandmother once presented Adeline a bracelet, but both girls loved this piece of jewelry very much. So sometimes Stella snuck into her sister's room and borrowed the bracelet. One day, Adeline came home and noticed the bracelet was gone. She knocked on her sister's door. Stella opened the door, realized it was her sister, and shut it again. In a couple of minutes, Adeline managed to break into the room. She started searching for the bracelet. Stella told her that this time she hadn't taken Adeline's jewelry. Adeline didn't find anything and had to leave. But on her way out, she remembered something and managed to get her bracelet back. Where was it? When Stella opened the door, she had her hair down. But later, she already had her hair tied up. In those few minutes, she made a bun and hid the bracelet in her hair. On a rainy summer night, Mrs. Miller came home after work. Her neighbor, Mrs. Smith, visited her. The women wanted to have some tea together. Mrs. Smith said her daughter was at a party. She met one of Mrs. Miller's triplet sons there. Mrs. Miller asked which one it was, but her friend didn't know. Her daughter could never tell the guys apart. The problem was all three of them were grounded and weren't allowed to go out until the next week. Mrs. Miller wanted to find out who had broken the rules. She called the boys and asked how they'd spent the day. Ian, the artist, said, "In the evening, I was outside drawing." Ryan, the musician, said, "I spent all day inside writing a new song." Luke, who likes sports, said, "I did a workout and spent the rest of the day reading." Mrs. Miller understood which of her sons was lying and grounded him for another month. Who's the liar, and how did she know? Ian lied. He said he'd been drawing outside, but it was raining. Another day, another walk in the forest, and Esme got lost again. And still, she managed to find the way to the witch's house. This time, the woman had another task for Esme. The witch gave Esme a candy bar and a knife. She was going to perform 7 tricks. After each of them, Esme had to give her 1/7 of the bar. But there was a catch. The knife was magical and could only make 2 cuts. It was also impossible to break the bar or cut it without the knife. How did Esme fulfill these conditions and return home? Esme made 2 cuts, dividing the bar into the following pieces: 1/7, 2/7, and 4/7. After the first trick, she gave the witch the 1/7 piece. After the second one, the girl offered the woman the 2/7 piece and took away the 1/7. After the third trick, she gave the witch the smallest piece back. After the fourth trick, Esme took away the first 2 pieces and gave the woman the 4/7 piece. Then she gave her the smallest piece again. After the sixth trick, the girl took away the 1/7 and gave the witch the 2/7 piece. And after the last trick, she gave the woman the smallest part of the bar again. Bonus question. Hey, if Esme is so smart, how come she keeps getting trapped in the forest? I have no answer. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the